My earphones came flying off my body here. So if, in fact, we are evolved, we got a problem with free choice because there really isn't any free choice. Now, you could say that your DNA chose. You could say that your chemical chose. You can say that your brain somehow functions independently without a soul. You can say all that if you want to. But then that also means this, and I want you guys to get this very, very, very clear point. If that is the case, then I have no reason to believe anything you say. Period. Now, if you want to argue that point, call in. My number is 646-595-3275. That's 646-595-3275. Just please don't swear. I will put you on hold. I will cut you out. Okay? I don't want to do that. I want to have a real, legitimate conversation with you. Well, the next point, that was C, free choice. The next point is R, reasoning. How do we reason? Do you ever think about that? Look, guys, the concept of reasoning is comprehension. How do you comprehend anything? It doesn't come from brain chemistry. You wouldn't trust it. There'd be no reason to believe in reason. You think. You really do reason. You come up with conclusions based on your thinking. Can I ask you a question? Could you put thinking in a bottle for me and give it to me? Can you paint it red, as Ken Hovind would say, as he's talking about gravity? Could you do any of that? No, you can't. Because when you reason, you are in fact taking your mind and coming up with conclusions based on immaterial realities. Francis Crick, who co-discovered the DNA molecules, had a very interesting quote in his book, Astonishing Hypothesis, as I mentioned with Kent earlier. He said that everything you are, and I'm paraphrasing, so don't throw tomatoes at me. Everything you are, your own reasoning, your self-identity, your sense of self-worth, is nothing more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules. In other words, what Francis Crick is saying is that you're nothing but a meat machine. So what reason do we have to believe in reason? Nothing. You're just a fizzing meat machine. Okay? We have this big, beautiful cosmos that is just illuminates a creation, and you are too. That's in Genesis 1. You're made in God's image. Now, I want to ask you this question. Now, if you're out there being skeptical on this whole thing, if Francis Crick wrote in his book, my conclusions that I write about in this book, Astonishing Hypothesis, are nothing more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules, you wouldn't trust that from a murderer. I mean, you just wouldn't trust it. You would look at that and say, are you kidding me? But he doesn't say that. Look, if Francis Crick and Richard Dawkins want to come up with all kinds of purposes and all kinds of reasons why we exist and what this brain chemistry is all about, then you got to stop using words like reasoning and free choice. And things like rights and wrongs. You can't use any of that because that's not your worldview. Now, that doesn't mean you don't believe in it. This is actually, I got to stop here because this is where many atheists will accuse me. They'll say, what are you saying? We don't have morality because we're atheists? And we don't reason because we're atheists? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying your worldview cannot justify reasoning and logic. It just can't. There are things like laws of logic, ladies and gentlemen. What are laws of logic? For instance, the law of non-contradiction. Law of contradiction is a law given by a lawgiver. And here's what it says. Opposite ideas can't be true at the same time in the same sense. I'm holding right now a blue pen in my hand. Look, guys, I'm going to come up with a conclusion right now. Just listen. I'm holding this blue pen in my right hand. Now, I know you don't see me. Just imagine it. Okay? This is not part of the game. But I'm going to make a statement for a minute, and I want you to respond to this. I'm holding this blue pen in my right hand and not in my right hand at the same time. I just want you to think about that for a minute. Why is it not true that I'm holding this blue pen in my right hand and not in my right hand at the same time? Well, it's because there's a little law out there that says opposite ideas can't be true at the same time in the same sense. I'm contradicting myself, right? Okay, this is Kindergarten 101. Now, why does that law exist? Why? Does evolution explain a law like that? Now, if you're going to call me up and explain that, I would really love to hear an answer. There is no way evolution can explain a law like the law of non-contradiction. Why? Because it's true for everyone, everywhere. It's unchangeable and it's immaterial. Period. Did you hear me, Christian? They can't explain why the law of non-contradiction works. They can use it, but to come up with an ontological view, in other words, an origin view or a why view of why it exists, why this law exists, they can't answer. But I got one. God created the world. In the beginning, God created. That's why. Because a God exists who is a thinking, reasonable being, and we are a reflection of that reasoning and thinking. Does that make sense? That's what it means to be made in his image. We don't look like God, and when Jesus came to the earth, we didn't look like Jesus either. We do in the human sense, physical hands and toes and so forth. But that's what that invisible attributes is. Now, God is a reasonable being. He didn't create that law. He is the standard of that law. How do I know that love? Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get to the next one. Let's go to I in our little acronym for crimes. I stands for information. How do you explain DNA? Can someone please explain how we have millions and millions of digits and letters and numbers coded to be who we are? Is it true what Richard Dawkins says, we're just dancing to the sound of our own DNA? Or is DNA constructed to be a book so that it constructs you to who you are, a living, breathing you? Now, no scientist is going to disagree with that. They see DNA as an incredible, complicated design that gives us the blueprint of who we are. The way you look, the way you feel, okay, in other words, your temperaments and so on and so forth, all comes from who you are as a person. But your body is constructed of DNA. It's a code. And in order to have a code, you need a coder. Microsoft is a software. Okay, it didn't create itself. It needed a mind to create it. A computer didn't construct itself. A computer needed a construction person. There had to be a design, folks. We can't explain DNA. We can't explain why it's in book form here. It's like a story. You can read it. And it gives you instructions of who you are as a person. It's incredible. And there are millions and millions and millions of DNA. Now, I'm going to do more on DNA and information. But something else about information is pretty compelling, and Frank Turek does a great job explaining this. Why is it that you can comprehend information? Again, you have to use your brain a little bit. Why is it that when you see written in the sand as you're walking down the beach, a big heart, and in the middle of that big heart, John loves Mary? Now, do you assume that the waves crashed up on the beach and wrote John loves Mary? Or do you assume somebody wrote it? Look, it's so evident. I forgot who quoted this, but the reason... I'm going to mess it up, so I won't even quote it. But there is a comprehension level to us humans that does, in fact, make us human. We can comprehend things and put them in order. If we're just random molecules in motion and you're just reacting to previous natural causes, then, ladies and gentlemen, nothing should make sense. In fact, you should have your own laws of logic. Try doing that, by the way. Try going to a bank and using the concept, well, what's true to me is true and what's true to you is true. Go to a bank teller and say, I want $100,000. And the bank teller is going to tell you, well, you only have $500 in your bank account. Well, that's true to you, but not for me. Guys, there's a truth out there. There is laws that is controlling you right now. And here's what I'll say. You are being controlled by it every minute, every second of your life. The people that came and make a mockery, they're just, all they're doing is being trolls, as we call them on Blog Talk. They are using the laws of logic too. They can't escape it. They can make fun of Christianity if they want to, but Christianity is the only faith in the world that has explanatory power and scope to be able to explain all of life. Well, that's the I, information. Let's go right to the M. And this is one of my favorite arguments to give to the atheist. Morality. Morality. Guys, we know what's right and wrong. Come on. And I've had people call me up or talk to me and say, well, what if someone broke in your house and you had to lie if they asked you where all your money was? Now, come on. You know that it means a maliciousness, not trying to protect my family or fight in the U.S. military, which I praise God for our U.S. military. I know there's a lot of unfans out there, but we do, in fact, are thankful that the men and women have died over the years to protect us, especially for something like this. Free speech. Love it. Anyway, I digress. Listen, you know what's right and wrong. If I broke into your house, burned all your pictures, and killed your family, you would look at me evil. And Richard Dawkins believes, in fact, there's another quote, and I'm going to bring it to you next time, but he actually believes there are some things that are evil. But and in his next breath, he's saying in another quote, there are no goods and evils. Well, wait a minute, Mr. Dawkins. Are there evils or are there not evils? Are there cruels, are there kinds or not cruels and kinds? You can't have both. You can't say those things are not absolute. And if you're going to say that morality is subjective, meaning it could change, or it's just based on, or I could say relativism, everything is just relative to you. You just kind of make things up, then we can't blame anybody. Listen, the child rapist that's in prison right now, listen, we cannot put him in prison. You know why? Because we can't blame him if all he is fizzing chemicals. Now, I know someone's going to make an argument, and by the way, if you want to call me up, we only got 17 minutes left. Call my call-in number, which is area code 646-595-3275. That's 646-595-3275. Now, guys, listen very carefully. The worst murderer who killed hundreds of children, Hitler. Let's use Hitler. We cannot blame him one least bit. Why? Because if evolution is true, morality is only subjected to you. It's relative to you. Okay? Listen, I don't believe for a minute that we live a life of subjectivity, especially when it comes to things like morality. Now, when it comes to whether your favorite ice cream flavor is chocolate, that's up to you. You want to argue those things, go right ahead and knock yourself out. But guys, listen, that is not what we should be looking at in morality. And the reason why is because then we can't blame anybody. Why do we have laws? Why do we have prison systems? Why don't we get rid of them? Listen, I'm going to call the judge right now. Mr. Judge, why did you put Mr. Smith over there or whatever, Bob, whatever, pick a name. Someone out there is going to be Bob or Smith, so I apologize. He murdered all those people, but Judge, we can't really blame him. The judge would say, well, why on earth not? Well, because he's just reacting. Look, Judge, when two people have a debate, it's kind of like having Dr. Pepper and Pepsi in two different 2-liter bottles fizzing when you shake them. That's the debate. It's just fizz in the brain. They're just fizzing. Oh, I've heard this argument so many times you couldn't be more wrong. Then try to explain morality. Now, I will have people argue with me that morality is based on some sort of learning system. Look, that doesn't help you, and here's the reason why. Everybody learns differently.